Welcome, everybody, to our Saint Brigid's webinar. I'm going to just come on over here and join Anne and Charlie. We are actually trying a new setup. This is our first hybrid seminar with our Promethean board. And so we're going to give people a little chance to join us. I see we're loading in here. That's exciting. And if you would just take a little moment, you can see Anne and Charlie have their mead, of course, and we'll talk a little bit about why that's fitting for tonight. Go ahead and get yourself a glass of something. We are just getting one last part of our technical element set so that we make sure that you can hear this beautiful slideshow. We are working on a technical element. It's our first time running in this format. We've done a lot of Zoom webinars here at Celtic Junction Arts Center, of course. That is where we are speaking to you from. We have our beautiful Owen McKiernan Library next to us. We are in the brand new education classroom. Many thanks to Tom Redshaw. We're coming together tonight to celebrate Regis Day. And there's so much to it. We decided we would label the event, Brigid, the woman, the mystery. Because for as many things as we think we know about Brigid, there's more questions that actually come up. Come on in, you guys. You can go ahead and take a seat. We've gotten started. So we've got some in-person attendance too. So if you see anybody coming in, just go ahead, sit down, join. It's a little bit of a party. We've got our mead and we're going to focus on the woman, the mystery today. And what we wanted to recognize is Brigid. Her cloak is spread out here at the foot of Anne and Charlie. It's actually my green velvet, but it's protecting the harp. We've decided that's a Brigid's cloak for tonight. We have our beautiful candles lit. We have the mead being poured. I hope you have a drink with you tonight. And we are recording the seminar so that we get to capture the wisdom that Anne and Charlie are going to bring us through as we proceed. Now we'll be going back and forth with the screen where you can see them some of the time. And then sometimes you'll actually just be seeing the screen if we've got everything going. So what we'll do is we'll take a moment to consider what is above us in the sky tonight. 50,000 years ago, a special green comet passed its way. We find it very fitting. It's as close as it has been in 50,000 years to us. And that the idea of the Festival of Brigid, of course, in Irish is called Imbolg. Imbolg means in the belly. And it's the idea of winter. Winter being the part that's dark and the part that seems to have passed. But the exceptional part of it is that it's winter, pregnant with new beginnings. We are bringing in the seeds that have been sown, that are in the belly, Imbolg, and part of what we are celebrating tonight. What else can we talk about, Anne, while we're waiting here?
I just thought of a toast. Oh, it's to the green comet. And I think it's wonderful that this green comet is heralding in Imbolg and Saint Brigid's Day, and Breed's Day, and St. Gavnet's Day, because St. Gavnet is also connected with bees. The way Brigid is, and that's why we have mead, because there is honey in the mead. And so I just think it's stunning that this is the first Ireland has declared it a national holiday, and it's the first national holiday for a woman. Isn't that right?
That is true. And maybe this would be a moment I'll just pop back in here, a moment to recognize that as part of Ireland's initiative, they have actually made Regis Day a national holiday, and that they want to recognize the women, they want to recognize Brigid, and have Brigid become as important as Patrick. So there's our challenge laid out for us tonight. I know.
And as such, the Irish Traditional Music Archives commissioned works from traditional Irish musicians. And so we're presenting their pieces. It's not all about us. There will be some about harp. But we're having, this is a celebration of this first Saint Brigid's Day, national holiday for this first one, serenaded by the green comet.
Serenaded by the green comet.
Okay, and so that's where we need to move right now into our next slide.
Saint Brigid's Day, Láile Bride, or Imbolg as it was known in pre-Christian Ireland, is a very significant date in the Gaelic calendar. It marks the beginning of spring, a time for hope and a time to let the light in. We're here at Solas Bride, where the flame of Bridget is kept. For me, Bride represents a continuum of a spiritual tradition in Ireland. Goddess or saint, she's associated with many things, with healing, with poetry, with fire. There are many traditions and customs all around the country associated with Brides. I'm from a place called Connemara in the west of Ireland in County Galway, and there's one particular tradition there that's associated with the area. My mother remembers gathering all the young women on the eve of Saint Brigid to make a Chris Bride, and they used to go around from house to house with the Chris. A Chris Bride is a straw rope woven into a loop with 4 crosses attached to it. They used to say the following rhyme or prayer to the household. Shahisteach me Chris, Chris na gera gros, Aire van het zie is teire riede Chris. Ma saur het hosje benocht, gom 6 míle fear a weesje blien o nacht. Shahisteach ma vrid, oig ma vrid, oig channen zie. Ma vrid oig al in je gleesa, in je de agus die. Zoet bin kom ma vrid, oig is beji buiri. Shahisteach ma vrid oig channen zie. Shahisteach ma Chris, o Chris na gera gras. Aire van het zie, agus aire rieten gris. Mas vare dasje ben nacht, kam a 6 míle fear. A beetje blien om nog, stach Chris na gera gras.
Well, these are various names and spellings of names for Brigid, the goddess, and actually the saint.
In Gaelic above, the top one is in Gaelic, and then we have Latin names, English names, Welsh names, German names, and Swedish name. And I think there's others as well, but really, Bridget became better known than Saint Patrick. And she traveled far and wide, and her fame went to Northern Europe, all over Northern Europe, and shared traditions.
And you'll note the name, the name Mary of Gales here. She's known in Ireland as Mary of Gales, and this was because the goddess Bridget had a son, and who was killed in the battle. Story of the Cowboy Cheer,
which will feature more in here, but I think modern day people, by the time Saint Brigid came around and she was chaste, people thought that the goddess Brigid, that her son was immaculately conceived like Mary's son. And that's, I think, why she became known as Mary the Gales. That's my take on it, anyhow. And she also, though, was known as being the midwife for Mary. And when Mary was pregnant, she accompanied Mary Mary was embarrassed before she got married. And she was embarrassed to go to the marriage house. And this is where she would go and be checked out and learn about those things that she didn't know anything about, and make sure that she could actually be able to have intercourse. Those were marriage houses, and she's embarrassed to go to them. And so Bridget dressed up. This is the first time she dressed up in rushes, and she dressed up and made herself look really crazy. So everyone stared at Bridget in this wearing rushes and didn't pay Mary any attention.
Next, we're going to hear a song entitled The White Goddess, written by Jennifer Armstrong of the famous folk singing Armstrong family in Chicago, whom I first met through my mother. The song is sung by Jennifer's friend, Mary Amadon, who is accompanied by her husband Peter on piano, and then joined by singing friends. All photos in the video are of Jennifer, the songwriter.
But the white goddess is Bridget, the goddess.
I am the morning, the light at the dawn. I am the maiden beginning her song. Golden light opens the sky to share. Freshness, newness, hope is my prayer. Spring is my mantle, flowers my crown. The joy of the rain pattering down, holding the lover close to my heart, ever renewing, that is my part. Spring, maiden, morning, love is mine. I am the heat at the fullness of noon. I am the mother, the birth coming soon. Summer comes in with sweat and with strain, tending the fruit and ripening grain. The babe in my arms, the milk from my breast, flowing, giving, soon we will rest. I am the barley bound fast to the cart, the harvest is in, that is my part. Summer, harvest, mother, birth is mine. I am the evening, the darkness of night, flowers and fruits are covered from sight. Winter comes in with harsh despair. Silence fills the brittle air. The black of my cloak enshrouds us all. Only the silent will hear my call. I am the ending before the new start. I am death, that is my part. Winter, stillness, darkness, death is mine. I am the night, the moon and the dawn. I am the quiet and I am the song. Maiden and mother and aged crone, three in one, never alone. Love, birth, death, all is mine. Love, birth, death, all is mine.
As we approach the feast day of Saint Brigid, I'm here in Pollardstown Fen to gather rushes in order to construct and make that iconic Saint Brigid's Day cross, very much associated with nature and very much associated with protecting animals and people. Saint Brigid's relationship with nature is documented in many Irish folklore publications. During my research at the Irish Traditional Music Archive, I came across a charming legend written by Cogitosus, who was an Irish monk in the 7th century. It documents Saint Brigid, the King of Leinster, a shepherd, and a magical mythical fox, and we see Saint Brigid stepping into the story in order to spare a shepherd's life, the shepherd killing the fox by accident, and Brigid training a wild fox in order to replace the king's original pet fox. We see these thematic elements also in Irish traditional music, many of the tunes referencing wild animals and nature. For example, we see the Fox Hunter's Reel, or we see that iconic uilleann piping piece, the Fox Chase. And when I was composing the tune Pert Nevrija, I really connected with those aspects of Saint Brigid and tried to encapsulate those within the jig and replicate the sounds of nature that we see in Irish folklore and legend. Looking at the history of Saint Brigid, as a woman I felt incredibly proud that Saint Brigid symbolises and represents Irish women on the island of Ireland. Of course, she is an ancient legend, but she's also a modern icon, a woman of compassion, a woman of creativity, and certainly a model of equality.
people have already expressed different personal experiences. They take in Brigid, Saint Brigid or Brigid in their own way. And that happened to us really in our own way. And I was interested in playing the Irish harp and played the Irish harp and championed it, and Charlie played the music as well. And we ended up eventually having daughters after a life of traveling, but we settled down in Minnesota, and we had our 6-year-old Orla was a member of the St. Paul Irish Dance Academy, and there was the College of St. Catherine's was putting on a Celtic Soul Conference, international conference they called it, and it was they had an actress, Karen Lee, that they wanted to do a Brigid play, and they wanted her to incorporate the St. Paul Irish dancers in it. And we landed the role of being not only musicians in the play, but some roles in it, and script writers. It's the first and only screenplay or stage play we've written. And doing research on it on Brigid, and neither of us were raised Catholic, but we had a library. And this was back in 1995, and way before things like Google, way before that. But we had a library at home, and so I was researching Brigid in there and came up with a play. And I want to go through the slides because you'll get a kick. Those of you who are local will get a kick out of some of the names, and also the characters in here. You'll see that the characters are such because they're some of her main or popular miracles that she performed. And so, and the dancers would, but anyhow, take a look at
on the screen here. This is me wearing the Brigid's white cow costume.
We just took that the other day. It was up in our attic. Eve's still after that 1995, but the Karen Lee, and we never got her picture. I mean, we didn't have a camera. We didn't get a picture of the play. But Orla is on the left there, and that's the following year. This is in Australia with her feet in the river. But doesn't she make a perfect Brigid with the connection of water and streams? A young Brigid, and she played the role of the young Brigid, and Karen Lee played Saint Brigid, and then Karen Lee was as a crone was in her character as the white cow goddess, and because Brigid had oodles of milk and butter, and that was her abundance. She had much abundance in her characteristics. And so Orla in the play was helping her get dressed up, and Karen puts on the cow mask, and Orla's line is, "Holy cow." Okay, this is from a 15th century manuscript. There's two that comprise on this. This is the Vitae Brigida. The life of Saint Brigid is told in song, and there's, gosh, I don't know how many verses are there in all, but I wouldn't do it this way today. That I did it on this recording. I did it as an instrumental, but I stayed with this also with the speech rhythms instead of doing it the way that the monks at Solem decided that every note should be equal. I incorporated speech rhythm into interpreting the melody, and thinking that these melodies might have existed on their own beyond the poetry that was there. But it working on that piece taught me that the Irish harp, the metal-strung harp, is very good at discerning the important notes of the melody.
di tokulo fel manutan gebat jenis di miraculo krebatun sumebat.
So this is what my harp looks like, and it's played on the left shoulder, and this is the tradition. If I sit down here, you'll see it's played this way. But the construction of this instrument was like this from somewhere in the Old Irish period. It was already this form circa 1000, and it's a very developed form. And the metal cheek bands are necessary for holding the great tension on the frame. It's really like a suspension bridge. And this curved four pillar with the thickened zoomorphic four pillar here, the thickening here is for strength. And it's put together. This is the hollowed out sound box. It's hollowed out from one piece of wood, usually willow. And willow is very connected with bees. If you read an article that's more than a page long on bees, you'll find willow mentioned. And it's hollowed out from the back, and then a back door is put on. And this is more about the construction of it. There's a mortise or a hole at this in the bottom. This stump belongs to the sound box, and there's a mortise here and a mortise at the top of the sound box here. And the four pillar has a tenon or a projection at each end. And then there's a mortise here that this tenon goes in, and then this is a tenon at the top of the box. And this tenon, we didn't know this until they did some more recent studies. This tenon goes all the way in. It's long. It doesn't stop up here. It's long, and you can actually get to it from inside the box. If you take the back door off. And the way you get the back door off is you loosen the tension enough on the strings, and then use like a padded chopstick to help push the door out. I don't think they use chopsticks, but something slender like that, and not too delicate. But essentially, this instrument is described in, I mentioned the Moichira, the Second Battle of Moichira, and it's the original inhabitants of Ireland were the Firbolgs. And so and then the Dadanan came in, and they were occupying islands in the north, and they were said to be fair-haired and tall, and they were very skilled in arts and magic. And sorcery. And that meant that they were probably very good with reading the skies and being able to predict when there would be a solstices, when there would be when there would be an eclipse, that sort of thing. I'm thinking of a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse, and with mathematics, you can actually figure out when they're going to come and be, and when they're going to occur. So if you learn your craft, there'll be a few times in your lifetime where you can make really super predictions and amaze everybody. But and I think they did this. And I think when we look at the characters involved in these legends, that a lot of this is calendrical in nature, and we'll be getting more to that too. The calendar is really important. The calendar is really important to the church too, with feast days and so forth. The calendar, calculating the year, is a huge element. But this instrument embodies the Conway Shira is said in the introduction. They notice all the threes, the trinities in the tale, and they equate it with the concept of the king and priest, the warrior merchant, and the shepherd farmer, sort of these three typical things in society. But I think that a better three is with the sound box, which has two female, a mortise at each end. It's the female, this is the belly, this is the womb, this is where the music comes from. So she, and the four pillar has a tenon at each end. That's he. I like to say the strong silent type. And they, it or they, and this has one of each. And people were well aware of genders and androgynous people were special. And it's like our Indo-European languages as well, with she, he, it, or they. Did I say that already? I think I did. Okay, well, I've said it before too. And the symbolism on here, it's interesting that the Irish word for this part of the harp is cor, which can be crane the bird. And chorus is spelled different ways. And it's also, cor is for tuning, properly adjusted. And I think that all of those meanings are correct. And I think that later that they were one concept that got spread into three. And the sound box of the harp, and okay, so we've got a crane here, and we've got this zoomorphic four pillar here, and I think this is eel. And I think that the sound box is bees, and it resembles the European beekeeping in the forest. And you would hollow out a tree high up. You climb a tree and hollow it out, try to make it high enough that bears can't get at it easily. Bears are always after the honey. And they hollow it out, cut a panel out, hollow out, and put holes for the bees to enter, put the panel back on. And so I think it's the resembling of this as a beehive, and more about this in harp traditions. I'm mixing up my stories here because I've taken away from my.
With the beekeeping, you've got to mention.
Yes, it's very interesting. We talked about virgin births, and the parthenogenesis, the ability to give birth or to procreate without having sex. And you end up, usually it's just ending up with the genetic material of the mother. And with queen bees, they could do this. And they actually controlled the gender of the hive. When they would first swarm, their swarming flight, they would mate with 10, 17 males, and their life would be, and they would hold all of that semen for their life. And they could use it as they wished. They seem to be able to use, and some they wouldn't use, like if they didn't think it was good. How did they know these things? And this is recent research on bees. But the queen could, if she wanted to give birth to males, she would create them herself. They would be just from her. It's very astounding, actually, on bees. And it's thought that eels are the same way. And to this day, we have yet to catch a spawning pair. And we don't really know. And birds are also parthenogenesis. And it looks like certain animals, mammals can't, but certain animals, when they're endangered and they need to increase their numbers, somehow they can transfer over and give virgin births. It's kind of astounding. But I think that this plays in a role with these animals being revered for, I mean, you know, these rural people, they understood, you know, how you get baby calves, you know?
Are talking about the symbolism, are eels parthenogenic at all?
Yes,
Well,
yes.
so we have two parts. We have the bees and the eels.
Yeah. And some birds are, and they don't know, they might only be, some birds are. The condor in California now, they've done genetic testing and they have just the female, the mother genes have been transferred on, and they're endangered. So, but most birds are wild and you wouldn't know, you know? So I don't know about the crane, but the crane here goes back, well, I see this as being very related to Ireland. The crane is interesting because back 2500, 3000 BC, there's harps in the Cyclades. This is pre-Greek, the Cycladic Islands, and there's harps that are, the Irish harp is played on the left shoulder, and the same with the Welsh harp, and consequently the European harp was, and then it later switched to the right shoulder, and this makes a big difference in the music that is produced, in the music style that happens. But not all harps are played this way, and the Cycladic harp is played on the lap this way, with the right hand playing the low notes. So it's odd, the right hand is playing the low notes and plucking in the left hand here. But it's so in a way it's sort of, it's similar, but the right hand is the active hand and plays on the stresses, and the left hand tends to beautify or affect the pitch or play the little notes because it's more facile and a complement. And I think of it as this is the male hand and this is the female hand in playing. But going back to Brigid and the harp, let's see, where am I going? And there's a tale, and this is a more modern tale. This is Saint Brigid was traveling with her sisters, and they needed a place to stay, and there was a petty king in the area, and they dropped in for his hospitality. And the king was gone with his entourage and harper, but his sons were there, the young princes. And so they did what they could, get them a meal and host them best they could. And then Brigid saw some harps hanging on the wall, and she asked, can you play them? Because I love to have some beautiful music. And the sons hadn't learned to play. They were no good at playing. And then she asked them to hold out their hands, and with her fingers, she touched all their fingers and said quietly some prayers. And then they played the most beautiful music that had ever been heard in this house. And they played, and the more they played, the more music that was wanted. And they played until the king came back with his entourage, and they were astounded that the sons were playing. And then they recognized, oh, that's Saint Brigid. She's done a miracle. Oh, of course. and they could play for the rest of their lives. But back to the Conway Chera, where Brigid first appears as Breed. She's the daughter of the Dagda, and that's the Dadan and the good god. And he's like Zeus, something like that. And she has two sisters, and they seem to be really a triple goddess. It's the same person with three different personas, different types.
And they have the same name, all three sisters. Breed.
Yeah, okay. And in this tale, this is the tale where the Dagda, they're fighting the Fomorian, and they were beaten by the Fomorian in the first battle. And then there's a Fomorian king, and he was terrible. And he was actually the one who fathered Breed's son. And there's a big mess anyhow, but they finally beat the Fomorian. But Breed's son was killed. It's an astounding story, and I won't tell you the whole thing because it's too much going on.
But her son dies here, and she comes, Brigid or Breed comes to visit his body, and it creates or issues the first keen in Ireland.
The first wailing.
The wailing for his death. That's Ireland's first keen.
But it's odd because he died because his father, the Fomorian, was wanting to win the battle, and so he talked his son into killing the top metalsmith. Named Gavnu, yes. And so he threw a spear at Gavnu, and Gavnu pulled it out of himself and threw it at the son and killed him. And so it's odd that he's a smith, and then Breed is the protector of smiths, and a smith on her own. In fact, and Saint Brigid gets connected with this too. And I was listening to an Australian podcast, and they were saying, isn't it odd that Saint Brigid was traveling around with a metalsmith? You know, this is with a man, and she's so virtuous, and what is this about? But she didn't realize St. Patrick had traveled around with two metalsmiths, and what they would do, they'd go and get get someone trained up to be a cleric at a new church, and when they left them, and I think it would take probably a year to go through the year's calendar. You know, you'd spend a year setting it up. And this is a copy of St. Patrick's. It's the earliest surviving bell, called the Bell of Will of St. Patrick's. But like that. And this was the design of the bells that was, and this would have been just like what Bridget was making. And I didn't have time, but I need to talk with my.
There's two metalsmiths would make bells like this for each.
No, only one.
For each
Patrick had
church,
two.
that they could leave it with each church that was established.
And this was made to sort of look like how the old one looked. It would be, if it were, it was sealed with being dipped into bronze, but this was minimal, so it would give a good bell sound, but have the finish of being really old. But I have to talk with Daniel and find out how would you travel around and come to a new area and would you have to go find the ore? And to make these bells, they weigh a lot, these bells. So anyhow, that explains Brigid traveling with a smith, I think, because St. Patrick did. But back to, okay, the construction of the harp has animals, there's eels. I talk about eel. Brigid's well has eels in it. And I'd like to say that there's eels in the Book of Kells, and they have their own carpet pages. Yes, there's fish in the Book of Kells, but there's just a little fish here and there. But the eels, and if you check their bodies, they're long and twirling around, and they have fins at the end. They are water serpents. And anyhow, Brigid's well, one of her earliest wells, had eels in it, not the later salmon. And I sort of think that swans replaced cranes in the stories, and that salmon replaced eels. But the folklore on eels is amazing, and they're both bees and eels are associated with healing and with the other world. And bees, there's a tradition throughout really much of Europe of telling the bees that when a head of the household dies, that one of the staff or family, one of the first duties is to go out and tell the bees, because they get the news to God right away. And God has to hear about this before the devil hears what goes on. And the bees are the best messengers to God. So I think that's really, really great on that. But so there's something in this was discovered in the great scholar, piping harp scholar Sean Donnelly in Dublin. He uncovered some letters, 2 letters in particular, that talked about, put together the concept of the ceremony of the raising. And when a harp was finished, when the harp maker finished the harp, it was sent to, in this instance, a blind harper for the ceremony of the raising. And I believe it's to put the strings on, bring it up to tension, and raise the belly. This belly was flat, created flat, and the willow draws up, and so it wasn't carved up at all. This has been totally flat, and it's pulled up. And this happens really quite rapidly in the life of the harp. And I remember, Charlie, you were thinking, how is it that it pulls up and doesn't just, you just keep going?
Keep going.
Yeah, that's what happens. Our belly is just, yeah, that's a little bit of difference in physics there, but the harp was finished. It was to be finished on Michaelmas, which is the end of September. That's when the harp was finished by the harper, went to for the ceremony of the raising. And guess when the harp was ready to be played? Saint Brigid's.
Candlemas also.
Yes, Candlemas. They share the holiday. And Saint Gavnet, who also is with bees, shares the same feast days. And so that's pretty wonderful.
Throughout the winter months, from the beginning of winter to the end, basically the end of winter.
It's like October, November, December, January. Well, it starts like at October, November, December, January, February, 4 months. It's a quarter of the year. That's the average period of gestation for a Clarshak. You see, because the belly swells. See, this is the female part. You put the male part and the female part, and add the spirit here, and put the and this makes me wonder, because this is not a through mortis. See, this doesn't come really in contact. This one is through. So maybe this harp really is. This music is immaculately conceived. Okay, And so let's go through some more slides that we have, like the year. Go down for pictures.
Okay, these are the swarming bees. You were talking about drones and so forth.
Yes, the bees. B is for Bridget, and that's an article written by O'Cahan, by Seamus O'Cahan. B is for Bridget, and he ties Bridget in with bears there. And I'm thinking the swarming honeybee, and you can't hear the sound of them, but they're around our B flat. And these two strings were tuned first on the harp, and called Nicoli, and Nicoli means lying together. And the earliest use of the term showed that it was of a woman and man fornicating on the string. So I'm thinking B. This is the pitch, and they didn't have tuning forks back when. And you had to be, certain instruments you'd tune up high, like a violin, you'd tune the string high and then tune down from it. But the wire strings are very particular, and they needed to be figured out very precisely. And to me, it's interesting that this B, and you can think of Bridget as B's, and this B up here is the pitch of what doves and pigeons sing at, and St. Patrick, and then you have Saint Brigid, and then you have St. Columkill. And Columkill, that's the Irish word for doves and pigeons, and that's their pitch. And oddly enough, up here is where the real high calls in response of cranes and of geese can be up here. And I think that that's associated with lamenting. I think the ululations, can you say it better than I can?
Ululations.
We're like that. That's what I think.
Getting back to the Ca Moy Chira story of the Dodonan's victory over the Fomorians at the very end of the tale, the Morrigan, like Bridget, another Trinity goddess, quite out of character, issues a jubilant incantation foretelling a time of plenty and prosperity, and many of the lines can be interpreted as relating to bees, such as swarm to the sky, full of honey, mead in plenty, spear on wing, and swelling on a branch. In fact, our growing interest in beekeeping and its lore and practices have led us to see this incantation as an ancient bee charm to entice the swarm to settle on one's own land, leading to ownership of the honey. If so, it predates the two earliest known European examples. Other practices to settle swarming bees include chanting "Go Creve" or "To the branch," and tanging on metallic brass. On Saint Brigid's Day in Ireland, it was traditional for beekeepers to light torches around the hives, letting the bees know it was the first day of spring and time to get to work.
Go Creve, go Creve, go Creve. Sheath go Nev, Nev go Davin, Davin van Nev, Njart die Gach. An Fallan, Land de Vil, Mead go Sain, Sof Ina. Ge for Skid for Durin. Luggage, trommage, badiras for björberna avu. Arve i meta, mes for krane. Drev och skis, skis to as, sajt och vatt. go creeve, go creeve.
And I talked about bears, and if you look at the underneath, that's a bear on the, I think it's a bear in the Queen Mary. It's missing part of the four-pillar, and I think it's been rounded out, and I think it's a bear down here, and it's going after the honey that is in the sound box, which is like the beehive. And that's what I think it is. And then a later harp, the coin harp, and this is a very interesting harp for all sorts of things. There's a bear at the head of the harp, and all of these animals, starting from sort of the base animals out and to the sort of the snake queen at the end, those are animals from Topsails. He did this animal book of drawings of fantastical and real animals, and it's on an Irish harp that it's pretty amazing. But there was a bear cult through much of Europe, and it exists still quite strongly in Finland. And I think Finland might be one of the islands that is mentioned as the Dadonin coming from, but I bet there's an F in the word, and just because of knowing these connections with the cultures, I start to wonder how real it is. This is Stirling Castle, and you can see, well, it was started in the 1530s and completed by the King James V of Scotland's death in 1542. And this next slide is of the presence chamber. And you see what we're talking about now will be those decorations on the ceiling.
This is the chamber outside of his bedroom, his personal bedroom. And we're talking about the decorations of the ceiling here.
Yeah. And here they were there, and only a lot of them were destroyed, but some were survived. The English army went in and just threw them out. But they hired, a woodcarver was hired to create replicas of those that survived. And he heard a radio show talking about the ones and ohs of Welsh music. And he noticed the patterns of ones and ohs on this sterling head.
This particular one of these heads on the ceiling, only one had these pattern of
These ones and ohs going around here.
see this,
Yeah,
the outside.
yeah. And you can actually notice this funny little head here on her breast there. And it's a winged creature, kind of, and kind of askew, and ooh. But and who was this? And an art historian, a Scottish art historian, thought it might be a female worthy, where these were people who had exceptional characteristics that were to be admired and be role models. And she thought this might be Saint Brigid. I wondered about it because this little guy in the breast was like, is this a woman who died in childbirth or miscarried, or, what's the story here? And it could have been also the sterling heads would also include members of the royal family. And there were some candidates for it, but nonetheless, I ended up thinking about it being possibly a Brigid theme, but it didn't matter. If you look at there's these circles, and if you start, you're going to the next slide. Go to the next slide here, so we'll come back. You'll see.
So a close up, you see the ones, double ones and zeros all the way around the outside.
Yeah, and then I called them these figures here, and initially I called them petals. But if you look closely, they've got this. Go to the next slide. If you look closely, you'll see that they sort of are in three sections, and then there's some that have little eyes and like folded arms, and they're like it's different stages of development. And for some reason, I started thinking bees. And if this is Brigid, and I thought these are next bee larvae, And you see how they look, the little eyes there in different stages of development. And actually they do this because of the gender, they develop at different stages, depending on the gender of the bee. So it's very realistic. So now go to the next one. We're going to follow these 1 and O patterns, and we're treating the ones as if they're the home chord and the O's if they're the away chord. And this could be a template upon which you can improvise music, rhythmic music that could be danced, and it would be a template that honors the calendar.
So in 3, and we'll just play the first
You want
4
to
lines.
do it in 3 and not 4? Yeah, okay.
In 3, and the first 4 lines, since the 4th line is the same as the first, and it makes a neat little dunid. And we'll do the 2nd line as a duet or chorus. And we'll repeat each line.
Okay, and I wouldn't mind, and I'm sure those following along in the chords wouldn't mind if you say things like repeat,
Yeah. Okay.
or if Charlie says doeth, that's the 2nd line, and I'll try to get there by the time he gets there. Okay.
See if we end up in the same spot here.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. Repeat. Doeth. Repeat. 3rd line. Doeth. Last line.
So we started looking at sort of numerology. Is the numerology slide here? Yep. Okay, and there's 36 bee larvae, 36 bee larvae total count. Now consider that 360 degrees in a circle, and this is a circle, 360 degrees, and a year is 12 30-day months. So this is a year right there in the circle, yeah? And Brigid being a calendar. So maybe they did these maybe this was really a feature. It's numerology, but in medieval times that was a type of science and philosophy. And you're going too fast. And let me see. And it's also 36 is the square of 6, and it's a triangular number, meaning that you can form a triangular 36, 1, 2, and a pyramid triangle like this of 36. And there's all sorts of things that it is, but then there's 28 border loops. And those are the border loops. There's 28 of those. They look like they're looping 1, 2, there's 28 of those. There's 28 lunar houses in astrology. There's 28 days and nights between full moons. And a full moon is a circle, yeah? There's 28 is a perfect number. It's also a triangular number. So it creates that triangle. And it's also a hexagonal number. And it takes 28 years for Saturn to revolve around the sun. And the Irishman, Johannes Scotus Erigena, who established, he went to Europe and was a teacher in what monastery? Oh gosh, I can't think of it. He advanced.
Single.
he advanced a harmony, a theory for harmony of the spheres that was more complete and better than Plato's. And it took 400 years for anyone to catch up to him. But he had the Earth, the circumference of the Earth being oot. And, you know, it used to be not do, but it was oot remi. Yeah. And then I think, Earth, Mother Earth, oot, uterus, you know, oot. And then the second tone is re. And I'm saying this because Guido de Lorenzo is credited with creating the solfege concept. But I wonder if he didn't just popularize it. When RE is from the Earth to from the edge of the Earth to the moon, and in Irish it is RE.
Right.
And then there's mi, fa, and sol is from the edge of the sun to the far orbit of the planets. They have the planets going around the sun. And then they have Saturn, and this is why I'm bringing Saturn going up. So they have Saturn also revolving around the sun. So it's 28 days. So 28 numbers, they knew that maybe this was for Saturn going around the sun too. I don't know. And also 280 days, which is sometimes 28, is the average period of human gestation. And, you know, breed was big on breeding. So there's 56 ones in this 1 and O pattern around there. There's 56 of them. Yeah.
Circle.
There's 56 Aubrey holes at Stonehenge. There's 56 cards in a tarot deck. And 56 equals 2 times 2 times 2 times 7. And that will be, there's 21 O's in the 1 and O pattern. 21 equals 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6. 21 is a Fibonacci number. It's a triangular number and an octagonal number. 21 equals 3 times 7. Okay. 77, the total number of ones and O's, which is 56 plus 21, or 77 is the total number of patterns. And 77 is 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7 plus 11 plus 13 plus 17 plus 19.
All prime numbers. The first 8 prime numbers
result in 77. You know, that mathematics was a game, I think, you know. And then 77 can represent Christ in the English language numerology. 77 is 11 times 7, of course. And 7 is also known as the Virgin number.
Brigantia, I don't know.
And this is in Scotland, there's a carving of Brigantia. And the Romans, you know, were in England and Scotland. That's how they became kind of Christianized. But when St. Patrick came to Ireland, Christianity really sparked up there. So
Brigantia is a Latin name for Bridget.
And you see there's a funny little man in the chest, and that's a gorgon. And that's from the Greek legends of women with snakes. Medusa was the most famous of them. And she's also the one that died. The other two lived, gorgons, and they also oftentimes had wings. And so there's wings. And that doesn't look like a woman with snakes on her head, but there we are.
Scottish Bridget tales and charms figure prominently in Alexander Carmichael's oral collections, including smoring the fire with 3 turf bricks surrounding a burning ember and calling on Bridget to visit and protect the household. Here's a ploughing song for Bridget's Day that survived orally into the last century.
Did you ever hear of things of Saint Brigid or Saint Brigid, the Breacher?
Right, but yes,
Did you hear of that?
that's a very certain day.
The beginning of February.
Aye, that's the day they were starting that ploughing.
Was it?
Aye.
Was it? Yeah.
And I have a verse or two of a song that was composed about that too.
Really?
And that would be the 13th of February.
13th of February.
That was like these in the olden time.
Yes, yes.
And that was the day they were going out to do the first bit of ploughing.
Yes, yes.
And the master poet, he was composing songs every day to his neighbours, telling
Yes.
to MacArthur that was up at Steel.
Yes.
And in one of his songs he mentioned about that day.
Did he?
And I'll sing you the verse.
Yes. Good. Good.
Smursen duch waait liedje bich kalmek mag kiemen je tjellige heen een zinde dan was. Liam wat ik garach van uitplakken salawak zachelijk nog zelf ongewoon. Smursieken dulsen dal ich halleluja sich min haar goed. Achtung, akken skjauw, iets in pijl in her. Met kossie zoeken voor alle kaden toen het plakken. Sko iets kakao, ja, gezwoot in je naast. The poet, Balmarston poet, composed that song. If this was St. Brigid's day, that Malcolm MacArthur would be out with his team of horses and
Yes.
starting plough.
Yes. Yes. I see.
And that's why the poet made the song.
Is that printed at all?
Eh?
Is that a thing that's printed? Has it
Oh
been
no,
printed?
it's not printed. It's
No.
not in existence now at all.
No. No. Uh-huh.
I believe nobody on the island of Tralee knew about them verses but myself.
Yes. That's very interesting.
And the wheel of the world, I wanted to see if you can see the wheel of the year here. The winter solstice is at the top, summer solstice, spring equinox, autumn equinox. And so that forms like a cross if you're dividing the circle into 4 parts of the year. And the Irish important calendar dates are on the quarters of that. So you shift the year that far. And those are the Irish feast days, but they celebrated them all. And the big megalithic sites in Ireland, they sold with Newgrange, Brunnaboyne, celebrates December 21st. The sun shines in through a portal, and you probably know of this down to the end. And Brigid is connected as a goddess with the sun. She is the sun, she is the moon. And also the summer solstice is celebrated. And then the equinoxes are celebrated as well. And there's other passage graves around Ireland that are very accurate at measuring the sun when there is sun on these days. And it seems like, and Brigid is also very connected with Lunasa over here. And I think actually she gets credited with most of these because these are calendrical just for harvest and for animal husbandry.
But she's also a fire goddess.
And the fire goddess, yeah.
So, fire feasts.
Yeah, and Belton, yeah.
Lunasa, Belton, yeah.
Mhm. And her wells, and Brigid's wells are connected with Lunasa.
Garduin arach
I'm Kathleen again from Ashbourne in County Meath, and we're here at Saint Brigid's Well in Kildare town. There's a well-known tune and a dance called St. Patrick's Day, and it's known all around the world. But in my research here, we realised that there actually isn't a tune or a dance dedicated to St. Brigid's Day. And legend has it that Brigid asked the King of Leinster for some land to build her monastery. He refused initially, but when she went back, she asked him, "Will you give me the lands that my cloak will cover?" And he said he would. So each of her 4 sisters grabbed a corner of the cloak and they walked in opposite directions, north, south, east and west. And the cloak grew and spread and stretched. And she built her monastery here in Kildare, not far from where I am today. So the tune I wrote is a slip jig, and it has 4 parts to represent the St. Brigid's cross and the 4 directions of her cloak spreading far and wide.
Yes, well, thank you so much for bearing with us.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll go block your light, and we'll just bid everyone happy St. Brigid's Day, and we'll say goodbye to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.